Hey guys, it's Lindsay. I don't know why I always put my hands up. It's like, oh, no weapons. I don't know. This is me, no makeup, sans makeup. I kind of felt like I needed to be a little bit bare anyway for some of the stories that I was about to unfold that are just kind of dark. And so this may not be the kid friendliest video. I'll try to keep it as Disney as possible, but just, it's life and it's reality and it's what happened. So it's a little harder for me to talk about these things than it is for me to write about them. And so please forgive me on that level, because one of the things that's happened since a lot of the PTSD, I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. What that means is that I didn't have just one incident. So it's not like I had one bad thing happen to me and then that was the end of it. It's complex because I've had several attackers throughout my life. I'm pretty much a cat who's used up all my 9 lives at this point. So going to the Philippines, it started, we were there in 1996. And 96, I was still living in Georgia, and it was when the Olympics came to Atlanta, and of course it was the Summer Olympics, and that was the summer I was gone. So I missed out on that. It was also the year that Flight 800 got shot down, and on that flight happened to be one of my schoolmates, Becky Olson. So a lot of things were going on in the world as well as where I was. 96, the culture in the Philippines, I was not prepared for the culture shock. I'd been to other countries, but they'd always been European. Their standard of living is similar. There's other problems that they have. Every country has their problems. But I just wasn't prepared for the Philippines. The Georgia heat had me prepared for the Philippines. That was fine. But the culture was extremely different. And it may have changed since 96. This is, over 20 years ago. So this was just my experience. I think I discussed how I was there with my my uncle who works in the Philippines. He originally joined the Peace Corps, and that's how he came there. And then he fell in love with the island of Bohol and with the people. And there's some amazing people there. They're very friendly. They invite you into their homes. So many things to just love about the people of the Philippines. The culture of the Philippines is a little different because there is a lot of poverty in the Philippines. There's some extraordinarily rich people and there's some extraordinarily impoverished people. And the middle class is very small. There's not a whole lot of them. And that's where my uncle was, is the very tiny middle class. And so when we first got there, it was just kind of overwhelming because when, they see Americans, they just assume you have money. And you just get surrounded by children with their hands out that are just looking for money and hoping you give them some. And so, of course, we did because we're newbies and, and we feel bad for them. And but then you learn the darker things, the underside to that. And I want to preface this because I have known Muslims from other countries, so I know that this is not a religious thing. It is a cultural thing specific to certain Muslims in this area, that they refuse to work because they believe that they are helping your soul get to heaven by you giving them money. So they're doing you a service by doing nothing. So great. So their profession is begging, and they really contribute nothing to society. That's all they do. So it gets more twisted than that. First of all, they build their houses on stilts in the water, so that they're not actually on the land, so that they claim that they are not actually citizens, so that they don't even pay taxes. But the worst part is that they've over time realized that the people who get the most money are children, or women and children, and people with disabilities. So that creates a system to exploit that, where they sell babies, they cripple their children so that they can beg for more money. Things like that. I mean, dark things. Again, while there are so many wonderful people in the Philippines, and the culture is really set up, we do have rape culture here in America, and it's horrible, but it's below the surface, and it's not as pronounced. There's at the core of rape culture was the premise that when you get married as a man, you had to be experienced in sex, and as a woman, you had to be pure and virginal and demure, etc. So there was this great divide, because how do you do that? How do you keep these two dichotomies just completely opposites, which creates rape culture? Because how else are you going to get laid and be the experienced man that you're expected to be? And the other way to do that is Americans, and because they just look at us like we're all loose and ready to go or whatever, and so a lot of Americans, especially women, when they get there, we're considered exotic because we're pale. We're just different, and especially if you have blonde hair and blue eyes, they're very attracted to that. My uncle used to talk about how they had a problem with a lot of the women in the Peace Corps, because they would be overweight, or they'd be basically underappreciated here in the United States. They were not considered attractive here. And then they would go to the Philippines and they would get all this attention, and all these men would be hitting on them and want to sleep with them, and they would get addicted to it. And it became a real problem, so they had to be very careful. So you've got this high rape culture. You've got this very different set of rules for men and for women. I think some of the more shocking things were just like men would just like pull it out and pee anywhere. It was like on the side of the road. It didn't matter. I mean, they were just like marking territory kind of thing. There were no doors on the bathroom to the men's room. It was just a different world. It was very strange. Just seeing that kind of poverty and what some people had to deal with. And I have all the respect in the world for my uncle for all that he's done to help raise the quality of lives and souls out there, because he does a lot of he encourages a lot of faith and worship and things like that kind of have helped. And so my experience with this, the first one was that instead of taxi cabs out there, they have what is known as trikes. A lot of times we go into town and we take these trikes, and it wasn't too expensive, and so it was a good way to get around. At the time, I was painting a mural at the Garden Cafe in Bohol, which is one of the businesses that my uncle started in order to employ deaf people. I was doing kind of a jungle theme mural on the wall, so I would take a trike in and paint most of the day, and then I'd take a trike back. And one day I was taking a trike in, and I knew the route pretty well. I mean, I was going in every day, and so I flagged down a trike, and I was writing it in, and it was a pretty direct route to the Garden Cafe. And this guy did not take me on the route that I knew he was like, oh, and I would say something, and he'd be like, oh no, this is the way. You don't know, I know a better way, and basically I was being kidnapped. It's a high kidnapping rate there. That's one of the ways that poor people make money, is that they kidnap rich people and hold them for ransom. It happens all the time. So anyway, he took me off into like kind of a more secluded area. You gotta understand, I'm 5'9", about a foot taller than most Filipinos, which was greatly in my advantage. And I was a red belt in Taekwondo, so that was helpful too. Because it also just kind of gave me the confidence to kind of stand up. So, in fact, I actually, one of the things that I did while I was there was I taught like a brief self-defense course to a lot of the deaf girls, because they actually get targeted a lot for rape because they don't know how to scream. And it's pretty bad. But I will say that trying to teach deaf girls how to not hurt each other in the process of teaching them how to hurt other people is a challenge. I learned how to do gently in sign language very quickly. So anyway, it was, and I was actually pretty proud of one of the students. I told him, you know, it's like, you might not be bigger than them, but you're bigger than their little finger. And that's one of the main criticisms of like people who have been raped, is like, well, why didn't you fight back? But your brain literally freezes, and you almost are catatonic. And because you're just like, I don't know how to deal with this. I've never dealt with this. I can't believe somebody would do this. And your brain just doesn't know how to handle it. It doesn't know how to react, and so it just freezes. And so anyway, but one of the girls that was in my class, I told her that about being bigger than their pinky, and she was determined not to be a victim, and she about bit the guy's pinky off. And while she still was victimized, which is quite sad, she fought back, and she was able to say, you know, she fought back as hard as she could, and there was proof of that. And it's really sad that it's one of the horrible things that you have happened to you. Nobody asks you for proof after you've been in a car accident, you know, or anything else bad happening to you, but you just like, you have to have like written records or whatever. Yes, I had this bad thing happen to me, because it's just a horrible crime. Anyway, so this guy pulls me off on the side of the road, and I get in his face. I got in his face, and I was like, you will turn this thing around. You will take me to the Garden Cafe, and you will not take me on any other routes or anything like this. And I just basically told him all the things that he was going to do. And I terrified the crap out of him because I was bigger than him. And so he was like, yeah, this is not going to happen. So he finally took me to the Garden Cafe. But what gets me, I mean, I'm sorry, it's just like, I still can't believe it. Okay, so the guy had taken me off to the middle of nowhere. He was going to do, I don't know what to me. And he gets me there, and he drops me off, and he puts his hand out for a tip. So I told about how we, in the last, I guess it was the last one, the spider one, about how we were secreted away to Lulai. I didn't tell why we were secreted away to Lulai. My uncle had a friend who he had met in the Peace Corps. I think his name was John. I can't remember, and I feel really bad that I don't remember. And so one day he took us out to that side of the island to go visit him and meet him and whatnot, and he wanted to go talk to him. He wanted to talk to him alone because basically John was going through a divorce, and his wife was cheating on him. So he was like, "Oh, the beach is right there." So we're walking down the beach, and it's gorgeous there. I mean, the island is paradise. I mean, if you like Hawaii, if you like beautiful beaches and things like that, Bohol is a gorgeous place to go. So we're walking in this beautiful paradise on this beach, and I'm walking with my cousin Alicia because she's there with me, and every now and then I just get these pings that something's gonna happen, which is really totally unhelpful because it doesn't tell me what. It's like, great, thanks. Alicia, something really bad's about to happen. And And there were some guys like walking towards us, and she's like, no, I think they're fine. Because she gets them too. So it seems to be a family thing. I was like, no, it's not them. But tonight something bad is going to happen. Well, this is one of those times that I was kind of spot on. Because that night John was shot 9 times in the chest by his wife's lover. Basically, she wanted more money from him, and they thought they could get more money from him if they killed him. So anyway, John was American, and his wife and the murderer were Filipino. And so they weren't going to press charges because they killed an American, and so they didn't really care about what happened to an American. And of course, my uncle got involved and was trying to press to make sure that they pressed charges. It was early in the morning. My cousin Alicia and I were downstairs, and we heard this thunk on the door. And Alicia went to go answer the door, and my uncle went and followed her. Well, when she opened the door, there was a knife in the door with a letter attached to it. And I vaguely remember seeing it, but they kind of tried to protect me from knowing about it. But he couldn't really, Uncle Dennis couldn't protect Alicia from it because she answered the door. So anyway, I didn't know until years later the contents of that letter. And basically, because my uncle was interfering and trying to go for justice for his friend who got murdered, they were threatening to kidnap me and Alicia. And so that's why they didn't tell us, because they were afraid I was going to freak out because somebody was threatening to kidnap me. My life is weird. That's why we ended up at Lawai. And I believe that they finally did press forward and get some justice. But I mean, they took us up there to Lawai. We got a week's worth of food. And after a week, they were supposed to come get us. And then after a week, they didn't. So we were there alone, and we ran out of food. So we had to like walk down the mountain and go shopping and everything. And I love Coca-Cola. That's like my big thing. That's my addiction. Okay. And so there was this little store up the road, and so they had Coca-Cola, and I was like, yay, I get my fix. And so we'd bought a bottle, and we came back, and they recycled. They let us know they recycled the bottles, and when they say recycle the bottle, they rinsed it out, and I'm not entirely sure that the water they rinsed it out was clean, and then they just refilled it with more Coke and gave it back to me. So that was interesting. But yeah, so they eventually did come for us, and then we spent some time at a resort. It was the most interesting resort I've ever stayed at, but that's another story. So anyway, the Philippines was definitely an experience. It was not safe. I guess nowhere in the world is really safe. I guess one of the saddest things, I guess on the same premise of everything else I've been talking about, was that my uncle had this fellow working for him named Teddy, and we really liked Teddy. He seemed very nice, and he seemed funny, and just normal dude, fun. And it turns out that Teddy was having relations with some of the deaf girls. It's really sad because Teddy flew the country, and so he didn't have any consequences for his actions. But because he represented my uncle's business idea, the National Deaf Education Association, my uncle's business got dragged through the mud, and because of this one guy's decision. And that's the thing. Rape is not one person's problem, one broken woman. It is not. It is that but it's so much more because it's a ripple effect. Everybody's a ripple effect. If you hurt one person, it hurts their family, it hurts their friends, it hurts the relationships they had, it hurts their ability to work. I mean, just it hurts society in general to allow things like this to happen. And there, what can you do? Because most of the time you can't do anything until afterwards. I mean, the police don't show up until after a crime is committed. You can't stop crimes from happening beforehand because people have to be proven guilty and everything. And that's right. I mean, in so many ways that you have to have, like, you know, you have to prove guilt before you can do anything. But there's not a lot you can do to prevent things. Except on your own. And it's just, it's, as you can probably tell from my tone and my face, I've been victimized by rape. That's one of the reasons that I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. I was molested at 12. I was molested at 18. I got, you know, this stuff. I was actually drowned and held under, which was the first molestation. And then my ex-husband kidnapped me and raped me repeatedly. Basically, he pulled a, if I can't have you, nobody can. And that's not to say that there wasn't, you know, harassment and every other thing under the sun on top of that. That's just being a woman. And it's wrong. Our own rape culture needs to stop. So, but that's another Me Too post. That's totally different from this. But anyway, so there's my culture shock in the Philippines, and that one time that I knew somebody who got murdered. So, so anyway, I have no idea how to wrap this up other than I want to say like and subscribe, but I'm just like, how do you like something like this? So, enjoy my pain? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, I feel like these stories need to be told, so liking and subscribing kind of helps that. And if you do that, that would be great. And go out and fight the good fight. And the best thing you can do is not be silent, because abusers, people like this, they thrive on silence. They thrive on making their victims afraid to speak. They thrive on keeping you quiet. So if you have had something happen to you, even if your voice cracks, speak up. Okay, have a good day. Bye.